Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive on getting ready for a Metal Annealer job interview.
All right.
We're going to use some real questions from RoleCatcher's resources
Yeah.
and kind of simulate that interview experience.
Yes.
So let's just jump right in. Think about what a Metal Annealer does. You're the one who takes that raw metal
Right.
and uses heat and precise techniques to make it softer and get it ready for anything,
Yeah,
from construction projects to pieces of art.
that's right. And the career guide actually highlights how crucial that role is across all these industries. It's not just knowing how to operate a kiln. You have to understand the science of how different metals react to the heat, the changes in their properties,
Yeah.
and then that critical thinking when you run into an issue.
Yeah, it's like you're a metal detective,
Uh-huh.
using your knowledge and your tools to figure out each piece of metal.
Absolutely. That's what hiring managers want.
So let's look at some interview questions and get you ready to impress. First one, what experience do you have with annealing metal?
Yeah, this is your chance to show you've got the experience. Right.
Or, at least some skills you can use in the role.
Now, even if you haven't had that exact job title,
Right.
think about times you worked with metal-operated machinery, followed instructions.
Remember we saw that entry-level metal annealer job?
Yeah.
They wanted someone comfortable with metalworking techniques and eye for detail, and someone who follows safety protocols.
Yeah.
So even if your last job was different, find those connections.
Let's say you worked in construction, you could say. While my experience has been in construction, I spent 2 years as a welder.
Okay.
So I learned how heat affects metal precise measurements and following all those safety rules. These are skills I'm ready to use as a metal annealer.
Perfect. You took something that seems unrelated and showed how it connects, showing you're adaptable and ready to learn.
What about follow-up questions? What if they want to know more about your welding? Be ready to talk about projects, what metals you used, challenges you had, and what happened in the end. Be specific.
Right, like you're telling a story.
Yeah.
And that's where RoleCatcher's AI comes in.
Right.
It looks at the job description, finds those important skills, and helps you create answers that show off those skills.
Exactly.
Like a personal guide.
Yeah. Okay, you ready for question 2? What are the different types of annealing processes you're familiar with?
Time to show off what you know. But it's not enough to just list terms. You need to show you understand them.
The career guide mentioned a few: full annealing, stress relief annealing, and spheroidized annealing.
Right. Now, spheroidized annealing might sound scary to someone new.
Right.
But you can still show that you've done some research.
Exactly.
You could say, I mostly worked with full annealing, but I've been reading about other methods like spheroidized annealing.
Okay.
I understand that it uses specific temperatures to change the metal and make it easier to machine.
You're showing that you're taking the initiative to learn new things, and employers love to see that.
What if they ask you why choose spheroidized annealing over something else?
The classic why question. Here you understand. Explain the benefits of spheroidized annealing. Maybe talk about how it makes machining easier, reduces wear on tools, and makes things smoother and more efficient.
Right, and connect that back to the company. If they specialize in machining, knowing about spheroidized annealing shows you've done your research and you're interested in helping them succeed.
Exactly.
So those follow-up questions are actually chances to show off what you know and how it fits with the company.
And don't forget, RoleCatcher can help you practice these. The AI looks at your answers, sees where you can be more specific or add details so you can really knock their socks off.
All right, on to number 3. How do you determine the annealing temperature for a specific metal? Now we're getting technical.
Yeah, here they want to see if you get the science. Remember, the career guide talked about functions and core abilities.
Yeah.
They talked about understanding metal properties, how they affect annealing, and what determines the right temperature.
It's not about memorizing a chart.
No.
It's about analyzing, considering all the factors, and using your knowledge.
You could say something like, determining the temperature depends on a few things. The type of metal is most important.
Okay.
For example, steel needs higher temperatures than aluminum. Thickness matters too.
Yeah.
Thicker pieces need more time to heat evenly. And of course, you need to consider what you want the metal to be like afterward, maximum softness, stress relief, or something else.
You get all the important points. Metal type, thickness, desired properties. You clearly understand how it all works.
Now imagine they follow up with, what if you overheat the metal during annealing?
Oh, that's a good one.
Right.
That tests if you know what can go wrong.
You could explain that overheating can make the metal structure change and weaken it.
And you could bring up quality control,
Yeah.
saying you check the metal, do hardness tests, maybe even look at it under a microscope to see if it was overheated and make sure it's good to go.
So you're not just answering, you're showing you know more, and you care about quality.
So think of those
Sense.
follow-up questions as chances to show off and connect your knowledge to what the company needs.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about quality control. How do you make sure things are done right during the annealing process?
Yeah, this one shows you're paying attention.
Right.
That getting things perfect is key to making good annealed metal.
And a small flaw can cause big problems later on.
Yeah.
A warped piece of metal can mess up a whole building, and a tiny imperfection could make a crucial part fail.
So how do you stop that from happening? What do you do?
Well, the first thing is to look at it carefully.
Okay.
You check the metal for any problems like scratches, discoloration, or warping. It's like giving it a checkup.
You're like a metal doctor.
Exactly. But it's more than just looking. The career guide talks about using tools like hardness testers to make sure the metal is the right strength. And depending on what the metal will be used for, you might even look at its structure under a microscope.
Oh, that's serious.
It is. You're using your eyes and your knowledge to make sure the metal is top-notch.
And remember to use the career guide.
Yeah.
It's like a cheat sheet for the interview. It shows you the skills and knowledge they want.
You could say, I know how important precision and quality are in this job. I would start by looking at the metal closely for any flaws. Then I'd use a hardness tester to check if it's the right strength.
That's a good start.
Hmm.
But what if they ask about a specific time you had a quality control problem?
Don't worry. This is your chance to show you can solve problems. Think of a time you had to fix a quality issue.
What if you had metal that wasn't getting hard enough even after you annealed it a few times? How would you figure that out?
First, I'd double-check everything, the temperature, how long it's heated, how fast it cools down to see if it's all set right.
Okay.
I'd also check the kiln to see if it's working properly. Maybe a part is broken or a sensor is messed up.
Like a detective looking for clues.
Right. And if I still couldn't figure it out, I'd talk to people who know more, check the manuals, or even call the company that made the kiln.
So you're showing that you're resourceful and you don't give up.
And you're turning a possible weakness into a strength. You're showing that you can think, analyze things, work alone and with others, and that you care about quality.
And don't forget, RoleCatcher can help you get ready for these tough questions.
That's right.
They've got lots of real interview examples and AI that gives you feedback, like having a personal coach.
Okay, let's talk about safety. How do you stay safe during the annealing process? This is important.
Yeah, they want to see that you care about safety for yourself and everyone else.
You remember the career guide mentioned the dangers of working with hot stuff, heavy machines, and maybe even dangerous materials?
Yeah, serious business.
Always start by talking about wearing the right gear, gloves, glasses, boots, everything you need to be safe.
Gearing up for a metal adventure.
Exactly. But it's more than just the gear. You have to understand the safety rules.
Like what? What are some examples?
Always be aware of what's around you. Make sure there's nothing in the way that you could trip over. Know where the fire extinguisher and emergency exits are and how to use them.
Okay.
And be extra careful around the kiln. It's hot and you could get burned. Never touch it or the hot metal without the right protection. Use the right tools and always follow the instructions for using and taking care of the equipment.
You sound like someone who's careful and tries to prevent accidents.
Right. Here's a tip. Before the interview, see if you can find the company's safety rules online.
Good idea.
That way you can talk about their specific rules and show you did your homework.
Now, what if they ask about a time you had to deal with a safety issue?
This is another chance to show you can solve problems. Think about a time you saw something dangerous or had to fix an unsafe situation.
Like if you saw someone reaching into the kiln without gloves on, what would you do?
I would calmly and respectfully tell them it's dangerous and remind them of the safety rules.
Right.
I'd say that everyone's safety is the most important thing.
You're being a leader and showing you care about a safe work environment.
And if it was something really serious, like a machine that wasn't working right,
Yeah.
I would tell my supervisor right away and follow the lockout, tagout procedures to make sure no one gets hurt.
Lockout, tag out. What's that?
Lockout, tagout is a way to turn off a machine and make sure it stays off while someone's fixing it.
Okay.
It means locking the power switch and putting a warning tag on the machine.
Like a do not disturb sign for a dangerous machine.
Exactly. By talking about lockout, tagout, you show that you know about important safety practices.
Okay, let's talk about another common question. What challenges have you faced during the annealing process and how did you overcome them?
The classic question about your experience.
Yeah.
This is where you show you can solve problems and bounce back from tough situations. Everyone faces challenges. It's how you deal with them that matters.
So what kind of examples should you use?
Pick something specific that relates to the job. Don't just say, I work hard and always figure things out. Give them a real example that shows how you think and find solutions.
Okay, let's say you were annealing steel, but it wasn't getting hard enough. What would you do?
Well, I'd start by checking all the settings, the temperature, the time, everything, and compare them to what the metal should be.
Right, making sure everything is set up correctly.
Exactly. Then I'd look at the kiln itself. Maybe a part is broken or a sensor isn't reading right.
Like a metal detective again.
And if I still couldn't fix it, I'd talk to people who know more, read the manuals, or call the company that made the kiln for help.
You're showing you're not afraid to ask for help?
And most importantly, I'd write down everything I did, what I found, and how I fixed it.
Oh, that's smart.
So I have it for later and maybe prevent the same problem from happening again.
So you're showing you can solve problems, you pay attention to details, and you're always trying to improve things.
And remember, RoleCatcher can help you practice these tough situations and give you feedback so you can improve your answers.
Okay, let's talk about something that might seem boring, but is actually really important. How do you take care of the annealing equipment?
Yeah, this might not sound exciting, but it shows you understand the job and that you care about preventing problems.
A well-maintained kiln is a happy kiln.
Exactly. It's less likely to break down, which saves time and money.
So how do you show you know about equipment maintenance?
First, you need to say that you always follow the manufacturer's instructions and the maintenance schedule.
Okay.
Those manuals are like the Bible for keeping things running smoothly.
Then you can talk about specific things like cleaning the kiln, checking the parts, lubricating things, and replacing worn-out parts.
You're showing you're not afraid to get your hands dirty.
And even if you haven't worked with annealing equipment specifically, you can talk about taking care of other machines.
Right.
Maybe you worked with ovens in a bakery or a ceramic studio.
The idea is the same. Cleaning, lubricating, and inspecting are important for all kinds of equipment.
Now, what if they ask about a time you had to fix something on the annealing equipment?
This is where you show off your technical skills. Think about a time you had to figure out what was wrong with a kiln or some other annealing equipment and fix it.
Okay.
Maybe the kiln wasn't heating up enough or the temperature control was messed up. How would you handle that? First, I'd check all the power connections and the circuit breaker.
Right.
Then I'd look at the heating elements to see if they were damaged. If it was the temperature control, I'd check the sensor connections and make sure it's calibrated correctly.
You're going through everything step by step.
And if I couldn't fix it myself, I'd get a technician or call the company that made the equipment.
You're showing you can handle things yourself, but you also know when to get help.
Exactly. And by writing down everything, I did what I found and how I fixed it. I'm showing I pay attention to details and I'm always trying to improve.
Okay, we talked about this a little earlier, but let's go deeper. How do you make sure you get consistent results during the annealing process?
This is all about showing that you understand what makes annealing work consistently and that you're not just pushing buttons.
Right, you're showing that you understand the science behind it all.
Exactly. It's like baking a cake. If you don't follow the recipe, you'll mess it up. But if you do everything right, you get a delicious cake every time.
I like where this is going.
With annealing, you want the same precision and consistency.
So what's the secret to getting it right every time?
First, you have to know exactly what the metal needs. Different metals need different temperatures and times.
Remember, the career guide talked about knowing your materials, the production process, and quality control.
Exactly. You have to know what kind of metal you're working with, how thick it is, what you want it to be like afterward, and anything else that matters.
And of course, you need the right equipment and setting.
Right. You need to choose the right oven, set the temperature and time correctly, and keep an eye on everything.
And don't forget about cooling it down.
That's important too. How you cool the metal affects how it turns out. Some metals need to cool down slowly, while others can be cooled quickly.
So how do you make sure everything comes together perfectly?
By following the procedures, paying close attention to details, and watching the process the whole time.
You could say something like, to get consistent results, I'd start by carefully checking the metal specs and the annealing steps. I'd double check all the settings on the equipment, temperature, time, cooling rate, everything. And throughout the process, I'd keep an eye on the oven and how the metal looks to make sure everything is going right. And I'd write down anything I see or any changes I make so I have a record.
That's a great way to show you're thorough. And to really impress them, you can mention other things you do to reduce variability.
Like what?
Things like heating the metal to a specific temperature before putting it in the oven,
Okay.
using multiple sensors to check the temperature in different parts of the oven, or using special gases to prevent the metal from oxidizing.
Those are some advanced techniques. You're showing you really know what you're doing.
Right. And remember, RoleCatcher can help you practice these answers and give you feedback to make them even better.
Let's shift gears and talk about the question. What experience do you have with using annealing ovens?
Yeah, this one is similar to that first question about your overall annealing experience, but they want to know specifically if you've used the equipment before.
So if you have worked with annealing ovens, this is your chance to really stand out. Be specific about the types of ovens you've used, the controls you know, and what you did with them.
For example, you could say, in my last job at company name, I used a specific oven type annealing oven every day. I was responsible for loading and unloading it, setting the temperature and time, and making sure everything was going smoothly.
But what if you've never used an annealing oven before?
Don't worry, this is where you talk about those transferable skills.
Right.
Think about any experience you have with other similar equipment, even if it wasn't for annealing. Maybe you've worked with ovens in a bakery or used a kiln for ceramics. Even if it's a different industry, the basics of operating an oven are usually pretty similar.
Right. Focus on those similarities and highlight the skills that would carry over to an annealing oven.
For instance, you could say, I haven't used an annealing oven before, but I have a lot of experience with industrial ovens from working in previous industry. I know the safety rules for working with high temperatures, and I'm sure I can learn how to use an annealing oven quickly.
It's all about showing that you're adaptable and willing to learn new things.
And don't forget to mention any training or certifications you have that are relevant, even if they're not specifically for annealing.
That's a good point.
Anything that shows you know about safety temperature control or operating equipment can be helpful. This is another area where RoleCatcher's AI can be really useful.
Uh-huh.
It can look at your skills and experience and suggest training programs or certifications that could make you a stronger candidate.
One last time, let's revisit this question. How do you ensure consistent results during the annealing process? We touched on it before, but let's make sure everyone really gets it.
Okay, this is all about showing you understand what makes annealing work consistently every time.
It's like baking a cake.
Hmm.
If you don't follow the recipe carefully, you might end up with a mess. But if you measure everything right, control the oven temperature, and time everything perfectly, you'll get a delicious cake every time.
Exactly. In metal annealing, you're aiming for that same level of precision and consistency.
So what are the key ingredients to getting it right every time?
Well, the most important thing is to understand the specific needs of the metal you're annealing. Different metals have different properties and require different temperatures and times.
That reminds me of the functions and core abilities section in the career guide.
Yeah.
It emphasized how important it is to know about raw materials, production processes, and quality control.
Right. You need to know what type of metal you're working with, how thick it is, what properties you want it to have after annealing, and any other relevant factors.
And you need to make sure you're using the right equipment and settings for the job.
That's crucial. You need to choose the right annealing oven, set the temperature and time accurately, and monitor everything carefully.
And don't forget about how you cool the metal down.
Absolutely. The cooling process can impact the final properties of the metal. Some metals need to be cooled slowly, while others can be quenched quickly.
So how do you pull all of this together to ensure those consistent results?
By following established procedures, paying attention to detail, and monitoring the process closely.
Okay, so you could say something like, to make sure I get consistent results, I would start by carefully reviewing the material specs and the annealing procedures. I'd double-check all the equipment settings like temperature, time, and cooling rate.
Right.
I'd keep a close eye on the oven readings and the metal's appearance to make sure everything is on track. And I'd document any observations or adjustments so I have a complete record.
That's a great response. To really stand out, you could mention some specific techniques you use to minimize any variations.
Oh, like what?
For instance, you could talk about preheating the metal to a certain temperature before putting it in the oven,
Okay.
or using thermocouples to monitor the temperature at different points in the oven. You could even mention using a controlled atmosphere to prevent oxidation.
Those are some great examples. You're showing them that you really understand the details of the process.
Right. And don't forget, RoleCatcher can help you practice these types of answers and give you feedback to polish them up.
Now, before we finish up, let's circle back to RoleCatcher and how its AI can really help you shine in the interview.
It's like a secret weapon.
Tell me more about how it works.
Okay, imagine this. You upload your resume and the job description for that Metal Annealer job you want.
Okay.
RoleCatcher's AI goes through both documents, analyzes the language, picks out the important words, and figures out exactly what skills and experience the employer is looking for.
Like it's searching for the best parts of your resume and matching them to what the employer wants.
Right. And it does more than just analyze. When you practice answering interview questions, RoleCatcher's AI gives you feedback in real time.
Wow, that's helpful.
It suggests ways to make your answers stronger, add more details, and highlight those key skills the employer wants.
It's like having a personal coach right there with you.
Exactly. And it gives you confidence. Knowing you have this AI helping you can make a big difference in how you present yourself.
Sounds like RoleCatcher takes away a lot of the stress of getting ready for an interview.
It really does. And they have a lot of free resources so you can start practicing right away.
So if you're serious about becoming a Metal Annealer, check out RoleCatcher. It's a great tool for anyone who wants to nail their interviews and get their dream job.
Absolutely. It's worth it.
We've covered a lot today, but before we go, I want to leave you with something to think about.
Okay, go ahead.
Think about everything we talked about today. The skills, the knowledge, the challenges, and the rewards. What makes you stand out as a potential Metal Annealer?
Yeah, that's the question you need to answer for yourself before you go into that interview. What makes you different? What are you passionate about? What makes you the best person for this job?
Maybe you're great at solving problems.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're a team player who loves to work with others.
Maybe you're always eager to learn new things.
Whatever your strengths are, be proud of them and be ready to talk about them in your interview.
Yeah.
Because when you believe in yourself, other people will too.
I like that.
Well, it's time to wrap things up. But don't stop preparing.
Right.
Keep practicing those interview questions. Keep using those RoleCatcher resources. And most importantly, keep that passion for metal annealing alive.
We believe in you. You can do this. Until next time, happy annealing.